what's going on. Let's go to Westminster and talk to Kevin Schofield. He's political editor of HuffPost UK. Kevin, where are things as we stand at 4:05 in regard to what the Labour Party is saying, and indeed some others as well, people like John McDonnell, who's suspended from the Labour Party at the moment? What are they saying about this, and do you think that Keir Starmer has done anything today to manage to get this slightly, or even more than slightly, on track?
Well, hi there, Peter. I mean, it remains to be seen right now, I suppose, how successful these attempts to buy off the rebels will be for Keir Starmer. He is, as we speak, in talks with a number of them. Now, I'm told that the main players behind this rebel amendment, that's Meg Hillier and Debbie Abrahams, they're negotiating effectively on behalf of the rebels. They're speaking to Number 10 to see what is on offer. Now, it was put to me that they will try to drive a hard bargain, and they will then come back basically to the other rebels and say, well, this is what we've got. But then ultimately it's up to the Labour MPs themselves whether or not they want to vote for it. And there's absolutely no guarantee here that what Keir Starmer offers them will be enough to persuade them to vote with the government next Tuesday. So there's so much riding on what occurs over the next few days as far as Keir Starmer's concerned. And the other thing to remember is there is an awful lot of bad blood between Labour MPs and Number 10. Backbenchers who feel they've been ignored, taken for granted for the last 12 months, are now thinking, oh, now we've got your attention. We've only got your attention because we're threatening effectively to humiliate you. So, you know, they have a lot of leverage in these discussions. And, you know, from speaking to them, there's a lot of them they're going to vote against, come what may. Yeah. But it's whether or not the Number 10 can persuade enough of the others to switch over will dictate whether or not this vote goes through next Tuesday. It's astonishing, isn't it? We're 8 days away from Keir Starmer's 1-year anniversary as Prime Minister. He had 411... Can't hear you, Peter. Sorry? I can't hear you. Oh, we're just saying that it is... can you hear me now, Kevin? Can you hear me now, Kevin? Well, I can, yes, yeah. Great, okay. I was just saying it's astonishing that we're 8 days away from Keir Starmer's 1-year anniversary as Prime Minister. He has a huge majority, he should be Lord of all these surveys, yet there are serious issues. I mean, is there any hope, do you think, of a compromise? And what could a compromise actually look like in regard to this welfare, in regard to these welfare cuts? Because they are cuts of welfare that will happen in the future. Yes, I mean, there is... as they call it, a landing ground here, that some rebels will, I think, accept some sort of compromise. There are those who will accept no compromise. They want the entire package to be ditched. So Keir Starmer won't have to worry about talking to them because he just cannot persuade them. But these rebels, they're not going to be bought off, as one put it to me, with just minor tweaks here and there. They want serious concessions, in particular on personal independence payments. They think that what the government has proposed in terms of taking these payments off people who really depend on that money is just cruel and unfair. And unless they come up with a serious dilution of those proposals, then they're not going to win over these rebels. But of course, the problem there is, as you mentioned earlier, the whole package is supposed to save £5 billion. If you start to water it down, then that number is reduced. And Rachel Reeves and the Treasury will be saying, oh, hang on a minute, that money's going to have to be found from somewhere else because we've already banked it, we've already budgeted for that money. So will that mean cuts elsewhere, which makes it very, very difficult for Keir Starmer? Well, Keir Starmer spoke to the House of Commons earlier today, a statement basically on NATO and the G7. He hasn't actually been in Parliament for quite a few days. He's had 2 big foreign trips. Let's just remind ourselves what he said on welfare earlier on today.
I know colleagues across the House are eager to start fixing that, and so am I, and that all colleagues want to get this right, and so do I. We want to see reform implemented with Labour values of fairness. That conversation will continue in the coming days so we can begin making change together on Tuesday.
Kevin, we'll talk about the substance of what Keir Starmer said in a second, but I retweeted something that you put on Twitter a bit earlier on today, 2 messages that you'd been passed to MPs from Labour whips. Pretty astonishing. Just talk us through them. Yeah, so the first one is fairly standard, really. The whips
notify MPs if there's something about to happen in Parliament, in the Commons chamber, that they'd like them to go along to. So it said basically, colleagues are encouraged to go along to the chamber to support the Prime Minister as he gives his statement on the G7 and NATO summits.
That's fair enough. Not every MP knows exactly what's going on in the chamber at any point. Might not know exactly when the Prime Minister is up. They've got a million other things that they're doing. They're not always. People always talk about the empty green benches and so on, but MPs, as you know far better than I do, Kevin, are often doing loads and loads of different things in the House of Commons and maybe around Westminster as well. But it was the second message as well that speaks volumes, I think.
Yeah, so the second message sent shortly afterwards said, colleagues must come to the chamber to support the Prime Minister's statement on the G7 and NATO summit. So you've got to know that is very different from the first one. The first one was colleagues are encouraged. This one said colleagues must come, which suggests to me that the whips were a bit nervous that not enough MPs had listened to the first message or shown their support.
That's pretty astonishing, Kevin, isn't it? That you have a Prime Minister with a huge majority. You would imagine that party discipline, at the moment anyway, seems to be to some degree falling apart when they don't even support the Prime Minister. They don't come to the chamber when they're told to do so. The whole system of whipping, the whole system of discipline in political parties, especially in the governing party, it's so incredibly important. And you rely on the people who have jobs, because if they don't do what they're told, you can take the job away from them. But of course, there are many people who just don't seem to feel they owe Keir Starmer much loyalty, especially at the moment. What's your assessment of that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And even that second message didn't really seem to do the trick either, because if you looked behind him when he was speaking, there's an awful lot of empty green benches. You know, for a statement of much importance, you know, let's zoom out a little bit. We're obsessed with the welfare stuff, but he was talking about, you know, the possibility of war, of national security, of defence. I mean, this is important stuff that he was there to tell MPs about. You know, and if you can't persuade your own side to come along and offer you their support at such a moment of national importance, then I think that speaks volumes about his authority, which, as we've already seen, is under serious threat.
In terms of what happens over the next few days, this vote won't be until Tuesday. First of all, do you vote will actually happen? Angela, of course, said at Prime Minister's Questions that it would. Does it happen? Do they get some sort of amendment, a government amendment, or of course these rebels who've put their names to what's called a reasoned amendment? There might be some of our viewers and listeners, I don't want to sort of bog them down with parliamentary procedure, but just tell us in layman's terms what a reasoned amendment actually is, what that could actually mean for the government legislation, Kevin.
Yeah, so basically this reasoned amendment would effectively kill the bill which the government needs to pass in order to bring about these welfare reforms. The wording of the amendment basically says that this House does not agree to give the bill a second reading, which effectively kills the bill. So, you know, it doesn't get more serious. Now, I read somewhere that the last time, I think it was in the 1980s, the last time a government lost a vote on the second reading of a bill. So this is big, this is huge. When you consider that Labour have an enormous majority, the fact that this is even a possibility is absolutely remarkable. Now, you're right, Angela Rayner said yesterday, Keir Starmer has insisted as well that this vote will go ahead. I'm sure right now that's exactly what they intend. But if we get to, say, Monday night and there's still, you know, no guarantee that they've won over the rebels, then the question becomes, do they put it to a vote and risk losing, which would be an absolute humiliation for the Prime Minister, or slightly less humiliatingly, do they pull it and say, OK, we get it, we've listened, we'll go away now and come back with new measures in the future? That's a big call. But right now, Number 10 are just focusing everything on trying to peel off as many rebels as they possibly can. The important number to remember is the majority is 165. They need the rebellion to be less than 83. So at the moment, we think it's 126 have signed this amendment. And remember, some might vote against it who haven't signed the amendment either.
That's right. That's right, who aren't public.
The rebellion could be higher. So they have to basically peel off at least 40, 43, 45, perhaps as many as 50 potential rebels to get them into the government's column so they can feel confident of winning the vote. But right now, it's on an absolute knife edge.
Interesting point just finally, Kevin. Jamie's been in touch on text 87222 with the word talk in your text. Jamie says, because they U-turned on winter fuel, the backbenchers think they can get U-turns elsewhere. Has Starmer actually made himself weak by U-turning, do you think?
Yeah, that's a very good point Jamie makes there. Absolutely. I think if there is blood in the water, then MPs will sniff it out. You know, if they think this government is weak enough that they can push and they will U-turn as they did on winter fuel, that's correct. Then they think, well, everything's up, everything's in play. You know, that even a 165-seat majority won't protect them. So yeah, absolutely. And then always remember as well, there are always other votes to come. There's other controversies to come as well. I think there's other things coming down the line quite soon, which will involve painful cuts to public expenditure, which will be very difficult for Labour MPs. And that's something else to bear in mind. This isn't, if he gets through this, there'll be other hurdles in the future, I'm sure.
Kevin, thanks for your thoughts there. That's Kevin Schofield there, who is the political editor of HuffPost UK.